How many decisions have you made just because of a momentary emotion? Emotional discipline is not about controlling everything. It's not about suppressing what you feel. It's not about becoming cold. It's something simpler and at the same time more powerful. It's about not being driven by everything you feel, because most of the time, feeling something already seems like a reason to act. You feel irritated and respond. You feel anxious and rush. You feel fear and pull back. You feel the urge and follow it, as if every emotion were a command, as if every internal movement had to be obeyed. And without noticing, your life starts being guided by moments, temporary moments, that end up shaping permanent decisions. But something changes when you start to see this clearly. Not everything you feel needs to become action. Not every emotion needs to become a decision, because emotions are movements. They come, they shift, they pass. But when you react immediately, you turn something temporary into something lasting. And that's where the problem begins. Emotions move fast. They create urgency. They push for action. They make something temporary feel absolute. But consequences move differently. They stay longer. And this is why emotional discipline matters. Because one fast reaction can create a situation that takes much longer to resolve. What lasts is often not the emotion itself, but what you did while it was in control. Because many of the decisions you make don't come from clarity. They come from impulse, from urgency, from momentary discomfort. And later comes the weight, the regret, the sense that it could have been different. But in that moment, it felt necessary. It felt justified. It felt right. Because the emotion took the place of choice. An emotional discipline begins exactly there. At the moment you realize that feeling something does not mean you need to act on it, there is a space, a small space, between what you feel and what you do. And that space changes everything, because that's where awareness appears. Before there was no choice, now there is. You feel, but you don't react immediately. You notice, but you don't continue automatically. You observe before acting. And this may sound simple, but it's not easy at first, because the mind is used to responding quickly, to justifying, to explaining, to acting. But gradually, something starts to shift. The urgency weakens. The need to react fades. And you begin to realize something important. Not every emotion needs continuation. Some emotions can simply pass, without action, without response, without consequence. And when that starts to happen, something changes inside you. The mind slows down, the body relaxes, and the sense of control stops feeling like effort and starts feeling natural. Because emotional discipline is not repression. It's not holding everything in. It's not pretending you don't feel. It's feeling without losing yourself. It's noticing without engaging with everything. It's allowing emotions to exist without letting them decide for you. And this changes the way you live. You respond better. You choose better. You act with more clarity. Because now, it's not the moment deciding, it's you. And this is what internal leadership looks like. Not controlling every feeling, not trying to become unaffected, but being able to remain present while something emotional is happening. To stay aware without becoming the reaction itself. That is where strength begins. Not in intensity, but in stability. And that creates a different kind of freedom. Not the freedom to do everything, but the freedom not to react to everything, to not be controlled by every stimulus, to not be pulled by every emotion. Because many people believe freedom is following everything they feel. Many people confuse impulsiveness with authenticity. They think that reacting immediately means being honest with themselves. But honesty is not the same as impulsiveness. You can feel something deeply and still decide not to act from it. You can be honest about the emotion without letting it control your behavior. That is not suppression. That is maturity. But in reality, that creates patterns, reactions, cycles, repetition. Real freedom comes when you don't have to obey everything you feel, when you can feel and still choose. That's maturity. Because emotional maturity doesn't appear when everything is easy. It appears when something triggers you and you don't react automatically, when something affects you but doesn't control you. And this doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small moments, simple decisions. You feel the urge to respond and choose to pause. You feel irritation and choose not to continue. You feel anxiety and choose not to rush. And each small choice builds something inside you. And over time, these small choices teach your mind and body something new. They teach you that not every emotion is an emergency, that not every internal discomfort requires immediate action. That pause is possible. And when pause becomes possible, clarity becomes possible too. Clarity, presence, awareness. And over time, this becomes natural because you're no longer reacting, you're choosing. And that changes everything. It changes your mind, your decisions, your life. Because when emotions don't decide for you, you start living with more stability, more clarity, more intention. Because freedom is not only about what happens around you, it is also about what no longer controls you inside. The moment irritation is not enough to decide for you, the moment anxiety is not enough to rush you, the moment discomfort is not enough to define your action, something changes. You begin to experience a quieter kind of freedom, one that does not depend on perfect circumstances, only on a more conscious response. And maybe what's missing is not more control, but more space. Space between feeling and acting. Space to observe before continuing. Space to choose better. Because that space is where freedom begins. And that's where emotional discipline is built. Not through force, not through pressure, but through awareness. If this made sense to you, pay attention to this during your day. Notice what you feel without turning everything into action, and slowly start choosing your responses more consciously, because real change begins in small moments of awareness. Be prosperous from the inside out.